Part 72. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 711. Big Hair, Moscow, Kremlin. Emperor Pu did not expect that all the politicians who had opposed the sale of Sakhalin Island in the past would now agree with it. Except, of course, there are a few more stubborn politicians who disagree. He suddenly realized that Li Qing was much more powerful than he thought, and he could defeat so many opponents in a short period of time. Has Li Qing had any contact with outsiders recently? Emperor Pu asked the person in charge of the KGB next to him. The head of the KGB frowned and recalled the recent information about Li Qing in his mind. Our people have been monitoring Li Qing's every move, and we haven't found anyone he has met yet. When Emperor Pu saw a pause in his speech, he knew there might be something inside. Continue. We have removed all the listening devices we installed in his house earlier, and we don't know if he has contacted anyone else through communication tools. In fact, before Li Qing arrived, the KGB had made detailed arrangements and installed a lot of monitoring equipment in its strongholds in the New World. Emperor Pu nodded. He was not surprised by this. If Li Qing couldn't even detect such a despicable method, then he is not worthy of being his partner. Emperor, are we really going to give up Sakhalin? The presidential assistant was a little reluctant. Regardless of whether Sakhalin is tasteless or not, it is still De Mao's territory. Selling it to Li Qing like this would probably damage the emperor's prestige. Emperor Pu raised his head and looked at him seriously. I must keep my promise, and De Mao must keep his promise, so that someone will continue to cooperate with us. Our goal is to restore the glory of the furry bear. Now is not the time to worry about an island. Besides, I didn't say I would give it to him now. It's better to delay it for a while. Emperor Pu's eyes flashed. His plan was not over yet. How could Li Qing get Sakhalin easily? The assistant nodded thoughtfully. Okay, get out. Emperor Pu waved his hand, and the others quickly walked out of the office. After the assistant carefully closed the door, he stood up from the chair, walked to the huge window, and looked at the snowy scene outside. Emperor Pu was very tired now, and he had worked very hard to support this crumbling De Mao. But there are still many people who are constantly holding him back. It's a pity that the huge De Mao can't find a talent like Li Qing, alas. And the Li Qing he was talking about was sitting on the sofa calmly listening to the complaints of his men. Brother, since the resolution has been passed, why don't you give us Sakhalin Island? Zhang Dongzhou said angrily. Yes, this person is too unlucky. Crow also chimed in. No one knows the situation in Sakhalin better than the two of them. In their childhood, they started to immigrate regardless of the consequences, while De Mao just let it go. Li Qing just smiled and smoked without saying a word. He had already expected Emperor Pu's shameless behavior. He had guessed Emperor Pu's plan as early as when Emperor Pu acquiesced in Xiaoli's actions. Brother, do you want to do something? Crow asked viciously. These people in the New World have this kind of temperament. Even in De Mao, they don't want to suffer from this bad attitude. Haha, don't be impatient. This kind of thing cannot be rushed, and there is no need to go to Emperor Pu. He has many reasons to deal with us, such as having to go through the procedures and sign a presidential decree. Li Qing has even thought of an excuse for Emperor Pu. However, he also knew that Emperor Pu could not delay for long, unless he did not want to overcome the island GT, which was why Li Qing was not in a hurry. What's going on at the United Nations? He is now more concerned about the conflict with Xiaoli than Sakhalin. Little Days filed a lawsuit with the United Nations, but the overwhelming majority of people support us. Li Qing nodded upon hearing this. It is useful for evildoers to complain first. No country in the world will think that the conflict was initiated by the autonomous province. Although the autonomous province made a splash during the naval war in the Middle East, What is surprising is that the ballistic missiles are not the autonomous province navy. All countries believe that there is still a big gap between the current autonomous provinces and the navy of the small days. In addition, Xiali's international reputation in recent years is really bad, except for a few countries that charge Xiali's benefits. Other countries generally support autonomous provinces. After all, there are people in the United States and China who support autonomous provinces. Both countries support autonomous provinces, and they will definitely support them as well. The representative of the beautiful country directly stated at the United Nations meeting that Xi's actions were inappropriate and that in order to maintain world peace, both parties were asked to exercise restraint. The words from my hometown directly poked holes in the children's lungs, accusing them of going to the high seas to enforce the law for no reason, which was a violation of international conventions, and they even opened fire first. This behavior is really despicable. And he also mentioned the Diaoyu Islands, saying that China also encountered similar problems. I almost had a cerebral hemorrhage on the spot, so angry that I heard that in the end, I was carried out of the conference room. Well, that's right. This matter has been suppressed, and now the people in Xiali are against each other. Let the pirates on Qiandan's side take action. Li Qing instructed. He has not forgotten that the most important thing now is to stop the flow of immigrants in the small days. Okay, brother, I'll contact Qiandan immediately. Zhang Dongzhou nodded. Zhang Qiandan was bored fishing in the sea on Pishan Island. Behind him was a group of navy and pirates who were laughing and cooking grilled fish. Of course, the two groups are very separate. One side is the navy of the autonomous province, and the other side is naturally the pirates. The two groups were clearly distinguished. Originally, the navy of the autonomous province looked down upon these pirates. In addition, knowing that most of the people in this group would not survive, it was better not to come into contact in order to avoid accidents. Lure sea fishing does not require any special skills at all. Just throw it hard and pull the fishing line back, and the fish will naturally bite the hook. Oh, why is it sardine again? Zhang Qiandan looked at it with disgust and threw the fish behind. Someone behind him cleaned it up, put salt on it and started grilling the fish. Sir, stop fishing, we can't eat any more. It's impossible. I have to catch another fish today. Don't you usually think that tilapia doesn't taste good? What? Sardines don't taste good either. Zhang Qiandan couldn't reconcile with himself, so he directly started a fight, insisting on fishing out something that looked like a bad product. The pirates didn't dare to say anything, but looking at their round stomachs, they must be full. Sir, phone. It's Demao. Hearing this, Zhang Qiandan reluctantly put the fishing rod into the soldier's hand. I'll answer the phone. You help me fish. No more sardines are allowed. The soldier looked sad and muttered in his heart, why don't you catch sardines? I'd better go straight in and get it. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 712. Jiro Sakamoto is a farmer who lives a simple life. After the Fukushima nuclear explosion, he moved his family to Hokkaido, where every inch of land is worth a lot of money. Hokkaido was not a very good place originally, but it became a popular place after the nuclear explosion. After all, it is far away and there is no nuclear radiation. The influx of a large number of simple people also caused every inch of land here to be worth a lot of money. Now the family is squeezed into a compartment of less than 20 square meters, and life is very difficult. In addition, he is just a farmer and has no special skills, so life is even more difficult. Hey, Sakamoto-kun, come here. Neighbor Ishikawa saw Sakamoto coming home from work and shouted quietly at the door. The two are from the same hometown, so they have a good relationship. Ishikawa-kun, is there anything? Sakamoto looked bitter. The money he earned from odd jobs today was just enough for the family's food expenses. He didn't want to talk nonsense with Ishikawa. Ishikawa looked around and secretly took out a piece of paper from his sleeve. "Sakamoto-kun, your ancestors were members of the Manchuria Reclamation Group, right? This will be useful to you. Don't tell anyone else." Sakamoto became even more curious when he saw Ishikawa's look. He looked carefully at the white paper in his hand. At the beginning, it was written with a few big words, "Recruitment of Karafuto Reclamation Group." Sakamoto read it carefully and showed a surprise on his face. It turned out that this was the recruitment form of the government's Karafuto Reclamation Group. Not only land, but also living expenses, and even someone arranged a smuggling boat. This gave Sakamoto, who couldn't survive in Hokkaido, hope. He hurriedly took the recruitment form back home to discuss with his family. Karafuto? Really? The family members quickly snatched the recruitment form from his hand and read it word by word. 5 minutes later, everyone's face was filled with joy. "God bless you," Ichiro Sakamoto's father exclaimed. Ichiro Sakamoto heard this and twitched his mouth. He thought about how his grandfather was a small leader in the Manchurian Land Reclamation Group and got a lot of good things from Manchuria. But all of them were taken away by Sakamoto's father, which led to the decline of the family and he became a farmer. Although the Land Reclamation Group could not burn, kill, and plunder this time, as long as there was land, there was room for survival. Ichiro Sakamoto picked up a samurai sword on the table. The surrounding tables were crowded and messy, only the table with the samurai sword was cleaned up. It can be seen that the Sakamoto family attaches great importance to samurai swords. Ichiro Sakamoto pulled out the samurai sword, which was shining coldly. The name of Sakamoto Yama was engraved on the handle. There were some dark red marks in the groove of the blade that could not be wiped off. Ichiro Sakamoto knew that it was the blood stains that soaked into the knife. Thinking back then, his grandfather Sakamoto Yama relied on this knife to gain a foothold in Manchuria. Now he also wants to use this knife to open up a world in Karafuto. The recruitment team will have a boat tomorrow night, let's go early. The earlier we go, the greater the harvest. If they go early, they can still choose fertile land first, but if they go late, it will really become a wasteland for reclamation. Good. The family of 5 said happily. They had no feelings for this place, let alone nostalgia. A day later, Ichiro Sakamoto came to the dock with his family. There were many people like them on the dock, most of them were carrying large and small bags with their families. They kept looking anxiously at the sea, fearing that the smuggling boat would not come. When Ichiro Sakamoto saw so many people, he felt at ease. With so many people on the dock, the government would not deceive them. Da-da-da, the sound of the ship's engine sounded. "Here they come, they come!" Someone shouted loudly. The whole crowd began to gather, everyone smiled, and breathed a sigh of relief. They believed that as long as they reached the other side of the strait, it would be the beginning of a new life. Only 50 people are allowed on each boat. All the boats were small fishing boats, and 50 people were already the limit. After all, there were still large and small bags of luggage. When people heard that there was still a quota limit, they all wanted to squeeze to the front, and the Sakamoto family also followed the crowd and tried their best to move forward. Fortunately, they finally got on a boat and breathed a sigh of relief. "I tell you, the whole journey is 42 kilometers, and we will arrive soon," the captain of the boat said loudly. "The water in the Soya Strait is very shallow, which is why Zaire does not send large ships, because it is too easy to run aground. Only this kind of small fishing boat is convenient for free travel." Sakamoto Ichiro leaned on the knife with one hand and held the side of the boat with the other hand, looking at the dark sea in the distance. "My grandfather used this knife to kill countless Chinese people. Now I want to use this knife to regain the glory of my family," Sakamoto Ichiro said to himself. Other Zaire people looked at the knife in Sakamoto's hand with envy, thinking that he was from a samurai family with a legacy. "Sir, I see your sword is from the Meiji period. Who is your ancestor?" "Well, my grandfather was the captain of the 24th Squadron under the first echelon of the Manchuria Reclamation Group," Sakamoto Ichiro said with some pride. "Wow, you are indeed a samurai family. The Manchuria Reclamation Group made great contributions to the great Japanese Empire back then. The descendant of a hero, awesome." Instantly attracted endless compliments from other people of the small Japanese. This is exactly what Sakamoto Ichiro intended. At least now these people will have an impression of him, and it will be easier to talk about anything in the future. 42 kilometers is not long, but not short either. It took more than an hour to walk half of the distance. After all, it was dark and there were small fishing boats, so it was impossible to walk fast. But the captain was familiar with the route and nothing went wrong. Swish. Headlights lit up on the sea ahead, and 5 speedboats started at the same time, rushing towards several fishing boats at a very fast speed. Not only did the ordinary people on the boat get scared, but even the boat owner looked serious. There had been no problems these days, so why were there suddenly more speedboats today? He didn't know what these people were up to, and it was too late to turn around and run now, as the fishing boats couldn't outrun the speedboats at all. At this time, the sharp-eyed people on the fishing boats had already seen the people on the speedboats holding guns. "Captain, what should we do? The other party has a gun." When they heard that the other party had a gun, the ordinary people on several fishing boats began to panic. The captain's face was livid. What should he do? How could he know what to do? He just took over the business of the ordinary government. He was not a self-defense force. Before he could think about it, the speedboat was already in front of him. The speedboat was full of pirates, looking greedily at the ordinary people on the fishing boats. All the ordinary people were so scared that they lowered their heads and dared not say a word. Sakamoto Ichiro even put away the samurai sword he had just used for show, fearing that he would be beaten to death by the pirates. The captain of the ship forced a smile. "Brothers, I don't know that this is your territory. I'm sorry for offending you. Take these first." The captain trembled and handed over a stack of Japanese yen. At this time, the pirates directly hooked the fishing boat and jumped on it. Haimang walked up and took the Japanese yen. The captain was about to breathe a sigh of relief. Since he had received the money, there must be more to talk about. But then the expression on his face froze, and he saw Haimang directly sprinkle these Japanese yen into the sky. The Japanese yen fell from the sky and crossed Haimang's gloomy face. Click. Haimang pulled the bolt. "Don't leave any." You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 713. Bang bang bang. Before the young people on the fishing boat could react, bullets penetrated their bodies and were killed one after another like wheat. This scene is so similar to when the Japanese invaders massacred the people of Jinling, China, 80 years ago. It's just that time and space rotate and good and evil are rewarded. Sooner or later, this debt will be settled on the people of Xyli. The pirates all showed their big yellow teeth and smiled ferociously. They had been accustomed to killing people since they were children, and they had no mercy for this kind of one-sided massacre. The stowaways who lived in their childhood fell into a pool of blood one by one, wailing, and the bullets directly took away the last warmth of their bodies. The gunfire continued, and after changing 3 magazines in a row, the pirates stopped shooting. Now there is no one alive except them. Haimang waved his hand coldly, and the pirates jumped onto the fishing boat one by one with joy and began to search for property. The Javanese pirates were originally poor and had been suppressed by the autonomous province for many years. It had been a long time since they had done such a big job. Damn, I was really rich when I was little. I even carry $US with me. Fourth, what do you think this is? What do you think this is? An older pirate raised his hand to show off. I saw a small golden bar shining in his hand. It's paid, I have gold bars here too. Rubles, dollars, haha. The pirates were very excited. This time the leader also said that 100% of the stolen items would be distributed equally to the pirates who robbed them. This time there was no commission from the leader. These pirates knew that the more they robbed, the more they would get. Therefore, everyone wanted to take off all the clothes from the corpse of the little man. Tisk tisk, what a pity, this little girl looks pretty good. Indeed, the skin is fair and beautiful, unlike Javanese women who are dark and shriveled. Next time, remember to stay alive. Everyone will have a good time. Well, we can't shoot like this next time. It took a few minutes to kill, but it took a full hour to search for the property. This shows how many valuable things the stowaways brought with them in their childhood. Okay, let's go. Hai Mang looked at his watch and shouted. Although the other pirates wanted to search more carefully, they reluctantly stopped their actions when they heard Hai Mang's cry. The pirates carried large and small bags of belongings back to the speedboat, which instantly sank 2 spaces. Why are you bringing this thing? It's worthless and it takes up space. Hai Mang looked at the pirate holding a samurai sword in disgust. The pirate was stunned and looked at the samurai sword still dripping blood in his hand. Isn't this an antique? Humming antiques. When the pirate heard that it was worthless, he threw the katana directly into the sea. The katana floated and slowly sank into the sea. Brother Hai Mang, the bomb is set. Hai Mang heard the sound and made an okay gesture. Set the boat. Boom. Several consecutive explosions resounded for several miles around, and several small fishing boats slowly sank to the bottom of the sea along with their bodies. The young people waiting to pick up the boat on Sakhalin Island waited left and right, but no fishing boat came. It wasn't until the fish belly turned white in the sky that they realized something was wrong. The situation was immediately reported to the Zaire government, which also took it seriously. After all, nearly 200 people had disappeared and they had to investigate. Moreover, Hokkaido is only 42 kilometers away from Sakhalin Island. It is a bit strange that there can be problems with such a short distance. Especially since there were no traces of the 5 fishing boats, it was possible that they had encountered a ghost ship. After some investigation, no useful clues were found, and we could only temporarily suspect that the fishing boat had lost its way. But Zaile's land reclamation plan could not be stopped. At night, several fishing boats began to secretly transport Zaile stowaways. This time, due to the heavy fog, the fishing boat moved very slowly, and it took a full 2 hours to reach the middle section of the Soya Strait. At this time, the people on the fishing boats were also a little cautious, because they all knew that none of the fishing boats returned yesterday. Although the police did not reveal any information in the small days, these ship bosses were not stupid and they guessed something from it. They even asked the Coast Guard ship to follow them, but were ruthlessly rejected by the Zaire government. After all, if the stowaway incident is discovered, it can be said that it was the stowaway's own decision. Once the Coast Guard ship takes action, it is equivalent to admitting that this matter is a government action. Hey, Nakamura, what's going on over there? Not yet. Where's Takeda? No. Several fishing boats are communicating discreetly via radio. If something happens, they will immediately turn around and call the police. Nakamura patted the first mate next to him and said, "You steer, I'll go smoke a cigarette." The first mate nodded, and Nakamura walked to the deck with a cigarette and lighter. There was barely enough room to stand on the deck. "Captain Nakamura, smoke mine," A stowaway handed Nakamura a pack of cigarettes. Nakamura raised his eyebrows when he saw the cigarette box. Hey, imported goods. Taking the cigarette box, Nakamura carefully identified the logo on the cigarette box, Skurd. Hi, made from China, it's very good to smoke, the stowaway flattered and lit a cigarette for Nakamura. Nakamura took a deep breath, and smoke came out of his mouth and nose, blending with the heavy fog in the sky. Not bad. Nakamura patted the stowaway on the shoulder and stuffed the entire pack of cigarettes into his pocket, which made the stowaway feel painful. Captain Nakamura, can you tell me what happened yesterday? This stowaway is a thoughtful person. Although the Coast Guard ship did not follow the fishing boat to the Soyuz Strait, it has been escorting them to the high seas. You know, there was no such treatment before. Nakamura looked around with his small eyes, and for the sake of imported cigarettes, he lowered his head and whispered, those fishing boats yesterday may have encountered a shipwreck, and they have not been found yet. The stowaway was shocked. What about the people on it? Nakamura shook his head and said nothing more. Dong, dong, dong. The fishing boat seemed to hit something, making a dong-dong sound. Nakamura frowned. Slow down, bring me a strong flashlight. He shouted into the cabin. He was not afraid of hitting something, but he was afraid that there would be fishing nets or something entangled on the propeller. The crew immediately brought a strong flashlight, and Nakamura moved to the side of the ship, bent down, and looked down while holding the railing. It didn't matter at first glance. A long-haired corpse floated on the sea. The black hair seemed to be caught on a hook. The whole corpse kept hitting the hull with the water flow, making a strange dong-dong sound. Nakamura screamed in shock, and the women on the deck also screamed. The stowaway who just handed over the cigarette quickly helped Nakamura up. Captain, what did you find? At this time, Nakamura calmed down, ignored the stowaway, and hurriedly got up and ran towards the control room. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 714. All fishing boats, stop. Nakamura picked up the radio and shouted. Nakamura, what are you doing? Why stop? What's wrong? Yes, why do you want to stop? What happened? You know, this is also a reef area. If you stop and anchor casually, the anchor is very likely to get stuck in the gap of the reef. Listen to me, don't drop anchor, stop temporarily and turn on the searchlight. Nakamura's lips trembled. I hope it's not what he guessed. Although the other ships didn't know why, they still did it. The ship slowly slowed down, and the searchlights of several ships lit up at the same time, making the dark sea surface a little bright. With the light of the searchlight, Nakamura looked at the sea. Nakamura almost fell to the ground, and saw several floating corpses on the sea, rising and falling with the waves. The corpses were already white with blistering, and their bodies were covered with mud and sand. Even some eyeballs were missing. It seemed that they were taken away by fish. The captains of the other fishing boats were also horrified. They went out to sea all year round, and they could easily judge that these bodies should have been soaked in the sea for more than a day. They also realized that it was most likely the group of stowaways from yesterday. Although there were only a few bodies in sight now, they believed that there were many such bodies in the sea area. Nakamura, return. Let's return. Go back. Nakamura heard the shouting on the radio and struggled to stand up. Let's go, return. At this time, the stowaways on the boats also screamed, and they also saw the bodies. Woo! The sound of the speedboat's motor came from far away. Nakamura immediately screamed, quick, return now. He could tell that this was not the sound of the fishing boat's motor. Several fishing boats began to turn around and return, but it was too late, and all their efforts were in vain. Even the Coast Guard ship might not be able to outrun this kind of speedboat, let alone an ordinary small fishing boat. The pirates didn't let the fishing boat escape at all. A rocket from a distance blew up the engine and killed many people. Then they boarded the boat and slaughtered them. Unfortunately, the pirates didn't get the women they wanted this time. There were a few who jumped into the sea, but the pirates didn't let them go and shot them. Finally, they looted the property, blew up the boat, and left in one go as usual. Finally, the government of Zyrizi noticed something was wrong and sent a Coast Guard ship to investigate early the next morning. The bodies of the people who died the day before were full of water and floated up one by one. You could see the bodies in the whole sea area. The Zyrizi investigators looked at the bullet holes on the bodies and understood everything. Someone was stopping these illegal immigrants. They didn't dare to delay reporting the results to the higher authorities as soon as possible. What? What did you say? Yasuda questioned Mata loudly. Prime Minister, after investigation, those illegal immigrants were murdered intentionally, not intentional massacre. Madian looked sad. What happened? Have you found out who it was? Yasuda stood up and asked. We have a direction. Most of the illegal immigrants' belongings were robbed. It seems that they were tempted by money. But, we don't know the identity of the other party for the time being. There is no way to find out the identity of the other party. We don't even know whether it was done by ordinary people, Big Mao people, or people from other countries. Huh, Yasuda glared at Madian with dissatisfaction. Madian quickly bowed and said, but through the bullet holes and bullets on the bodies, we have simulated several possible firearms used by the other party. Speak. The bullet should be 7.62 x 39 mm intermediate power ammunition, and the charge should be 1.6 grams. Common gun types may be ACM, AK-47, M716 or AR-15. The easiest to obtain here is AK-47. Hearing Madian's report, Yasuda nodded. As for uncommon gun types, it's not impossible to have Chinese Type 56 and Type 81, but these are more difficult to obtain. Ma Tian thought for a while and continued. He thought it was unlikely that China would intervene in this matter. After all, they had no interest in this matter. If it was purely based on the theory of interests, it might be done by Russia. But thinking about Russia, it was unlikely. If it wanted to stop it, it could directly have people expel these illegal immigrants. Why bother to massacre these people? Yasuda sat down again, closed his eyes and thought for a while, and suddenly remembered the 3 warships of the autonomous province last week. Ma Tian, do you think it's possible that they are from the autonomous province? Ma Tian frowned and thought about it after hearing what Yasuda said. Everything is for profit. What benefits can the autonomous province get from massacring these people? Is it just to make life uncomfortable? According to his understanding of Li Qing, it is unlikely to do such an immature thing. After all, massacring civilians will cause international outrage. When Java massacred the Chinese autonomous province opposed the massacre of Javanese, and the United Nations had already introduced corresponding policies. He didn't believe that Li Qing dared to risk being sanctioned by the United Nations and massacre these illegal immigrants just to cause trouble for Zyrizi. I can't rule out this possibility, but I can't find a reason why Li Qing did this. From what we know about him, he does things with a certain purpose. Oh? Then what is their purpose in attacking our Zyrizi patrol ships and fighter planes? Yasuda asked in disbelief. In his opinion, Li Qing's actions are hard to understand, such as the Mekong River case and the Variang. Doing these things is meaningless to Li Qing, and he even lost a lot of favors for these things. That's why he can't understand Li Qing. Maybe the massacre of illegal immigrants was really done by the autonomous province. Although he disagreed with Prime Minister Yasuda's point of view, Ma Tian did not refute it on the spot. He believed that everyone was driven by interests when doing things. Li Qing is so great? Just foolishly make wedding clothes for others? Not likely. Then, what should we do next? Ma Tian asked carefully. Continue. Send some escort ships. I want to see who is messing with us. Yasuda pursed his lips and said. He still had reasons to shirk the escort once or twice. At most, he could say that the fishing boat was stranded and they received a distress signal. Ma Tian nodded and immediately went down to make arrangements. After all, the reclamation plan had to continue to be implemented, and he couldn't retreat because of this setback. But what surprised him was that he didn't see the gangsters who committed the crime in the next 2 days. Once there is no fleet escort, the group will come out to commit crimes again. This happened several times, and those who were planning to sneak across the border also knew about it. The number of people who took the initiative to sign up for the pioneer group is getting smaller and smaller, and even 50 people are not enough. After all, Xiaozi is not stupid. He can barely survive in Hokkaido. If he sneaks across to Karafuto, Sakhalin Island, he might die on the way. Yasuda ordered angrily, find all the uninhabited islands in the surrounding waters. Also, find the traitor for me. The other party can know the details of the Self-Defense Forces escort. There must be a traitor who leaked the information. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 715. Yasuda decided to stabilize the country before fighting against foreign enemies. He stopped the fake story of smuggling and started a vigorous self-examination campaign internally, vowing to catch the traitor. Anyway, there are many people living a simple life on Sakhalin Island now, and suspending it will not have much impact on the reclamation plan. Brother, it seems that the plan for the simple life has been suspended. Crow said to his elder brother Li Qing with a smile. Li Qing nodded after hearing this. In any case, his goal has been achieved temporarily. Brother, those simple people on the island are a problem. Zhang Dongzhou touched his chin and thought. Pirates can slaughter the smuggled simple people, but if they dare to go to the island to slaughter them now, I am afraid it will cause unnecessary trouble. Li Qing nodded gently. Not to mention that Sakhalin Island is not his now, even if it is his, these people cannot be dealt with openly. He killed too many people in Java back then. At that time, technology was not developed, and he spent a lot of money to block the news. If he wants to do it this time, he must be more cautious, at least it will not be seen on the surface, but this requires careful research. Li Qing was thinking about how to deal with the people who lived a simple life on the island. His subordinates hurried in to report that there was news from the Kremlin, asking his elder brother Li Qing to go there. Li Qing did not waste time and took Zhang Dongzhou and Crow to the Kremlin directly. In the car. Brother, what do you think he has to do this time? Zhang Dongzhou asked in confusion. Crow also pricked up his ears like a curious baby, with his eyes wide open. Li Qing smiled, good news. I guess the signing order for Sakhalin has been passed. To be honest, according to Li Qing's guess, Putin the Great could not stand the pressure, and it was estimated that there was also the Hebrew Consortium's return of favors to fuel the flames. Besides, Putin the Great just wanted to create some trouble for Li Qing, and didn't want to really default on his debt, so he had to go with the flow and sign the presidential decree. After all, nearly 200,000 simple immigrants in Sakhalin Island are already a big trouble for Li Qing. The car quickly arrived at the Kremlin. As usual, Putin was waiting for Li Qing in his office. Haha, Li Qing, long time no see. You've gained some weight. It seems you've gotten used to Da Mao's diet. When Putin saw Li Qing come in, he stood up and shook hands with him with a smile. Haha, Mr. President, it's true. I'm so popular. Many people have invited me to dinner recently. Li Qing curled his lips and smiled slightly. His words slightly stimulated Putin. He didn't believe Putin was not aware of the Hebrew Consortium's actions at all. Hearing this, Putin still had a smile on his face. Oh, Introduce them to me some other day. I also want to meet such friends. Li Qing smiled even more brightly, no problem. How about I call them to the dinner later? Li Qing was not afraid of Putin's threat at all. But Putin's smile was a little stiff when he heard Li Qing's words, haha, next time, the president of Madagascar is visiting tonight, and I'm going to attend the dinner. He could guess who they were, so why bother calling them to dinner? He made up an excuse and passed it off. Well, I'll call them next time when I'm free. Li Qing saw that Putin changed the subject, so he didn't pursue it. The two resumed their normal conversation. Come, Li Qing, this is the signing order. Putin picked up a signing order from the table and walked towards Li Qing with a smile. Li Qing, who usually had a calm face, was also a little excited at this time. After all, he took back the lost land of the Qing dynasty 100 years ago. In a sense, it should be regarded as recovering lost land and expanding territory, right? But Putin looked at the signing order, and his expression gradually became serious. Li Qing, don't forget what you promised me. Sakhalin is sold to you privately, and you must not give it to anyone or any country. Putin bit any country very hard, and it was obvious that he was also worried that Li Qing would give Sakhalin to China. In that case, he would really become Empress Dowager Cixi of the Qing dynasty 100 years ago. This is my only request, Putin reminded emphatically. Li Qing also knew that the possibility of transferring it to China was almost zero, at least in the short term. If this was really done, the navy of Russia would not be a pushover. Emperor Putin would take back Sakhalin even if he was attacked from all sides. Don't worry, Mr. President. Emperor Putin looked at Li Qing seriously and nodded, and put the signed order in Li Qing's hand. Well, I believe you, and I hope you can do what you say. I will evacuate all the personnel of Russia within a week, and you will send someone to hand over. Li Qing nodded. He had already asked the autonomous province to prepare. Once he received his order, those people would rush to Sakhalin as soon as possible. Most of the autonomous province's navy will also be stationed in the naval base left by Russia to prevent accidents. And, there are still some people who sneaked into Sakhalin Island. I can't help you with this. You have to solve it yourself. Emperor Putin smiled at the corner of his mouth. Li Qing would definitely swallow his conspiracy. He was looking forward to how Li Qing would solve this matter. If so many Zirizi were to be driven away by force, the United Nations and international humanitarian organizations would certainly intervene, and Li Qing would be in a state of panic. Besides, Zirizi would definitely not be idle, as Li Qing was well aware that he had just shot down 2 fighter planes of Zirizi. Thank you, Mr. President, for reminding me. I will handle this matter properly. Li Qing smiled and thanked Putin, with no sign of anything wrong on his face. The two chatted for a few more words before Li Qing took Zhang Dongzhou and Crow out of the Kremlin. In the car, Zhang Dongzhou and Crow each looked at the signed order, and both were delighted. Last time, they had taken the Java Autonomous Province by force, but this time, such a big island was taken out of the mouth of Mao by big brother Li Qing. Besides, can Java be compared with Mao? In terms of national strength and international status, they are not at the same level. The two looked at each other for a while, and then they found that big brother Li Qing had been silent since he got on the car, and the smile on his face was restrained. Looking at each other, Zhang Dongzhou asked cautiously, "Big brother, what's wrong?" Li Qing frowned, "Nearly 200,000, I really want to kill them all." The cold air emitted from his body made the two shiver. They both knew that since the elder brother Li Qing said this, it meant that he really wanted to kill all these people. Then kill. Kill. Zhang Dongzhou and Crow paused for a while and said fiercely. Both of them had come from a sea of blood and a mountain of corpses. Not to mention Crow, Zhang Dongzhou had always hated people who lived a simple life. This is not 100 years ago. If it was 100 years ago, he. Li Qing's eyes flashed with murderous light. If it was really 100 years ago, he might have really made a Tokyo is hot incident. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 716. Mao did not publicize the sale of Sakhalin Island, but soon almost all countries knew about it. Because the 3 Javanese warships stationed at the Sakhalin naval base openly could not hide it from other countries. Mao's silent withdrawal of all troops and people of Mao nationality could not be concealed from other countries. But the most exciting things here are the 2 countries of Xiaoli and Huiguo. Small days, Hokkaido. What? Is it really Li Qing? Yasuda's stern face, which had remained unchanged for thousands of years, also showed an expression of astonishment. He never thought that De Mao would sell Sakhalin Island to Li Qing. Asshole, you're selling it too, why don't you sell it to us? We can offer 10 times more than Li Xin, no. 100 times more. Yasuda gritted his teeth and looked like he wanted to bite Emperor Pu to death. He didn't even think about it, what kind of person was Emperor Pu? If sold to Li Qing can help suppress the development of beautiful countries allies Xiaoli and Bangzi in East Asia. In addition, it is very likely that there will be a gap between Li Qing and the beautiful country. What are the benefits of selling to Xiaoli? Let your relationship with China break down? Let the power of the beautiful country be strengthened in East Asia? Why would Emperor Pu sell this kind of plan that kills many birds with one stone to Xiaoli? Asada also stood aside with an ugly expression. He underestimated the New World and even more underestimated Li Qing. Your Excellency Prime Minister, it seems that, the person who massacred the stowaways is probably the New World. It's not possible, it must be Li Qing. He never shows mercy when he kills us little people. Yasuda clenched his fists. He now wished he could send troops to Sakhalin. Prime Minister, what will happen to the immigrants in Sakhalin Island? Asada Kamichi asked worriedly. He was afraid that those immigrants would be treated unfairly. When Yasuda heard Asada Kamichi's words, he sat slumped in his chair, and Damo's efforts to make the land reclamation plan completely failed. Only now did they realize why De Mao had been conniving with the small-time stowaways in the past few months. It turns out that De Mao has already set a trap. With nearly 200,000 immigrants, how can we just retreat? These people are pouring into Hokkaido. Do you know what will happen? Yasuda glared at Asada Kamichi. If these people really flood into Hokkaido, the instability will inevitably increase and cause considerable damage to Hokkaido. They have built Sapporo as a new Kyoto, and the sudden addition of 200,000 people will disrupt their plans. Asada Kamichi did not dare to speak anymore. After a while, Yasuda also sighed. Our efforts cannot be in vain. We must make these 200,000 people stick to Sakhalin like nails. Yasuda thought for a while and continued. Then he remembered that their lurking plan was also failed by the New World, and he couldn't help but cursed angrily. But he quickly regained his composure and said, Ma Tian, please arrange for those who have the ability to mobilize to hold some demonstrations. We are going to make things bigger, and it is best for the United Nations to get involved. I believe Li Xin will be under pressure to let these people continue to live on the island. Asada Kamichi looked hesitant, based on his understanding of Li Qing. This man didn't know how to compromise. The massacre of Javanese people in the autonomous province was still fresh in his mind, and he was afraid that the people on the island would make the same mistake again. But now he does not dare to refute Prime Minister Yasuda. After all, his prediction about Li Qing was wrong last time, and he is not sure what Li Qing will do next. Hi, I'll make arrangements right away. Asada came bowed 90 degrees and walked out of the office. Yasuda rubbed his tingling temples and let out a long sigh. Life has been rough these past few years, and a series of plans have been ruined. Let them use up the wealth and international status accumulated in the past few decades. With the rise of the behemoth China, especially the rapid development of China's Navy and Air Force in recent years, small life has become more and more stressful. In today's small life, there is not even a regular army, and the father's recent attitude towards them in the beautiful country also makes him worried. Damn it, damn it. The latent plan was exposed too early. If we had to wait 30 years, no, 20 years. Within the circle of senior intellectuals within this behemoth, different voices will appear. The tail will not fall off by then, and even if it is exposed, there is nothing they can do. Damn Li Qing. How wonderful it would be if Li Qing never appeared in this world. Yasuda leaned on the back of the chair tiredly. Unlike Yasuda, who had a sad face, the conference room of the Ministry of National Defense in Kyoto, China, was filled with joy. I didn't expect it. Li Qing actually captured Sakhalin Island. How did he do it? Pu Jin is not an easy person to talk to. Li Qing is too powerful. Lao Qi, this is what your brother is doing, someone said with a thumbs up. Qi Gang was also smiling, even he didn't expect that brother Li could eat this piece of fat. Ahem, Sakhalin Island is of great significance in Li Qing's hands. Now Xiaozai and Bangzi are feeling uncomfortable. These people are not only happy for Li Qing's personal happiness, but also happy that China has a helper to suppress Xiaoli and Bangzi. After all, it's not easy to live with enemies on all sides. Sigh, I only know now, why did brother Li want a nuclear bomb? Qi Gang shook his head and lamented Li Qing's foresight. By the way, 4 pills were approved. Qi Gang nodded. He asked brother Li a few days ago if he wanted to ship the nuclear bomb to Java. Brother Li Qing asked him to wait a moment, but he was waiting here. Buzz. Qi Gang's cell phone vibrated in his pocket. He took it out and saw that it was Li Qing. Speaking of the devil is here. I'm going to answer the phone. The other generals also wanted to listen, but Qi Gang didn't give them a chance and walked out of the meeting room in a few quick steps. Hello? Brother Li? Congratulations, the news has caused a sensation here. Qi Gang joked. Brother Qi, don't laugh at me. It's just a coincidence, just a coincidence. Li Qing laughed on the other end. Then he said, Brother Qi, please send the 4 big treasures directly to Sakhalin Island. I miss them so much. You kid, no wonder I didn't let you send them to Java. They are waiting for me here. I will send them to you right away, haha. Qi Gang knew that Li Qing was anxious, so he didn't hesitate and said he would send them right away. By the way, there are many small lives on Sakhalin Island. You have to be careful, Qi Gang frowned. Li Qing knew that his hometown must be concerned about Sakhalin Island, otherwise he would not know it so clearly. Well, this is indeed a problem, but it is not unsolvable. Don't worry. Li Qing nodded, indicating that he had found a solution and asked Qi Gang not to worry. Then the two chatted for a few more words and agreed on a place before hanging up the phone. Let's go, let's get on the plane too. Li Qing put down the phone and said to Zhang Dongzhou and Crow behind him. The troops and personnel of the autonomous province are already on the way, and they have to rush over to Hong Kong movies. I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 717. The cold wind in winter is as sharp as a knife, especially on Sakhalin Island. The cold air flowing down from the Arctic swept across the entire Sakhalin Island. But no matter how cold the weather was, it couldn't stop Li Qing's inner passion. He finally took back his homeland 100 years ago. From the moment he set foot on this land, he felt a sense of excitement from the bottom of his heart. To be honest, this would not have been difficult to do in the 1930s and 1940s, when the craze for colonial independence was aroused. But now after the 21st century, especially after the disintegration of Mao Zedong, the world structure is basically stable, and there are no conditions for independence or regaining lost territory. Take the Falklands as an example. Its area is only 12,000 square kilometers, which is several times smaller than Sakhalin's 76,400 square kilometers. Until now, the Pampas Eagle and John Bull have been arguing over the ownership of the Falklands, and even friction has occurred from time to time. From this incident, we can see how difficult it is to regain lost ground. This is why Lee Sin is proud. Tisk tisk, maid, you are so lucky in your little life. In their Hokkaido, our mountains on Sakhalin blocked the cold wave of the Arctic. The crow chattered. Yes, I'll rob him if I have time. Zhang Dongzhou nodded in agreement. Li Qing smiled. He was eager to see the 4 big treasures now. Let's go, the nuclear weapons should be arriving at the naval base soon. Li Qing wrapped his coat around him and said. Zhang Dongzhou and Wu Wu quickly followed and got into the car. Brother, with our current financial resources, it shouldn't be difficult to build nuclear weapons, right? The crow in the car asked a question that he had wanted to ask for a long time. In today's new world, to use an idiom, the country is extremely wealthy. For their level, it is not impossible to manufacture nuclear weapons. But the eldest brother also asked for nuclear weapons from his hometown, which made him a little confused. Li Qing glanced at him and sighed. Although Crow had been by his side for a long time, he had some character flaws and never thought deeply about problems. After all, he couldn't force himself before graduating from elementary school. Crow, some brothers may have the same idea as you on this issue, and don't understand that we are already so powerful. Why don't we make our own nuclear weapons? In fact, this problem is easy to understand. Now almost all the first-class countries in the world know the nuclear reactor equation. Why don't they dare to build one? Although we have a good relationship with the beautiful country now, once we touch its deep-seated interests, it will also show its fangs to us. Li Qing shook his head. Let alone the beautiful country, if he crossed the line, I am afraid other countries would not agree. Crow and Zhang Dongzhou nodded thoughtfully. The 4 big treasures arrived as promised and were handed over at the Sakhalin naval base, and Li Qing finally felt relieved. This time, no matter how hard I am in my little life, if I am annoyed, I will give him an electric cannon first. On the way back, Li Qing felt a little unhappy when he saw the street people full of people. Qian Dan, where are you now? Brother, they will arrive tomorrow. Li Qing squinted and leaned on the backrest of the back seat. Once our troops arrive, we will directly declare martial law. Obviously they already know that Sakhalin Island belongs to the New World, but if these small-time people still stay here, they must have other agendas. He had a premonition that the people in the small days would not calm down, and they would cause trouble while he was still on his feet. By the way, Dongzhou, bring over all the Aoki team. Li Qing's eyes lit up, and he suddenly thought that the Aoki group, the branch of the New World in Xiali, was still in Kyushu, so he simply transferred all the Aoki group members over. Zhang Dongzhou nodded immediately. Xianji called him some time ago to complain that Kyushu was too small compared to Honshu, so this time he asked them to come over and help. Furthermore, there are many people in the Aoki group, and they are very familiar with these people. The car quickly arrived at the villa where we were staying. This manor used to be the residence of the commander of the Mao Navy stationed in Sakhalin. After they evacuated, Zhang Dongzhou had someone take over the place immediately as a temporary residence for his eldest brother Li Qing. We bought this place, why aren't we allowed in? Yes, we have the title deed here. It's written in black and white. We spent $1 million to buy this estate. In front of the villa stood a group of noisy young people. The New World boys who were guarding them were pushing and pushing these people, trying to drive them away. Li Qing frowned. Crow, go ask what's going on. Wu Wu got out of the car with a bad expression. His elder brother was a little upset at first. People are still making trouble here in these small days, and they simply don't know how to live or die. After about 5 minutes, Crow walked into the car with a gloomy face. Brother, that bitch sold the manor before leaving, and now he is making trouble with the land deed contract these days. Li Qing frowned. Now that the entire Sakhalin Island belongs to him, what use is the land deed in their hands? You guys go take care of it. Zhang Dongzhou and Crow nodded, got out of the car and asked someone to open the iron gate to let the eldest brother's car enter the manor first. Then he slowly walked to the side of the troublemaker. When the young people saw a car entering the manor, the scene became even more exciting. Dozens of young people protested at the same time. Who went in? This is our house. Whoever allowed him to enter the manor, I tell you, you are breaking the law. Asshole, this is our manor, rush in. A gunshot made the whole place silent. Damn, are you here to eat for nothing? Or are you used to obeying the law? Crow ignored these little guys and walked up to several New World brothers and attacked them. He seriously suspected that these brothers were stupid in Mao and did not use force. If they were Southeast Asian brothers, they would have cut off these little guys' hands and feet. Several New World brothers twitched their faces. They were mercenaries. Military orders were as heavy as a mountain. They would not act without orders from the upper level. Draw your gun. Whoever is making trouble, shoot him. Crow glared at them. Several brothers did not hesitate at all. They took out pistols from their waists, opened the safety, and loaded the bullets. They pointed the pistols at these little guys who were making trouble. When the little guys saw the other party pulling out guns, they also began to panic, but they were still unwilling to give up. You know, the money was collected by several families. Damn, using a gun to scare me. Bang! This time, the New World kid didn't hesitate at all and shot the little guy who was talking right in the middle of his forehead. Seeing a big hole in the back of this little guy's head, the other little guys turned pale and frightened and stood there. You dare to kill people, I'm going to call the police. Bang! Another gunshot, accompanied by the gunpowder smoke from the gun barrel. Another little guy fell to the ground. Run. Now all the little guys found that the other side was completely different from before, and they killed people without blinking an eye. Bang! Bang! The gunshots continued, and the little guys who were running away continued to fall to the ground. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 718. Brother Crow, how many of them have escaped? Should we chase them? The New World brother asked quietly after he had used up all the bullets in his pistol. Crow glared at him. Wouldn't it be better if we did this earlier? Why are you chasing them? It's so cold, let's deal with these bodies quickly. The brothers grinned. They had a great time killing people just now. It was difficult to deal with the bodies scattered all over the ground. Fortunately, the civil servants of the city were waiting to take over and had not yet completely withdrawn. In particular, there was a ready-made crematorium at the funeral home, which saved them a lot of trouble. After all, the frozen soil on the island is harder than steel now, and it is not suitable for direct burial. Li Qing sat in the villa, with fur burning in the fireplace, making crackling sounds. Watching Zhang Dongzhou and Crow walk into the villa, Li Qing put down the book in his hand. Is everything settled? Yes, brother, everything is settled. Li Qing had no sympathy for these little days. Now the autonomous province's main force has not arrived, and only some of the New World members of De Mao and Er Mao have come with them. Once the army of the Java Autonomous Province arrives, all of these troublemakers will be locked up in the small black room. Hey, big brother, you haven't read Spring and Autumn recently. What book are you reading? Crow asked curiously when he saw the book next to his big brother Li Cheng. Well, this is from a gentleman. In fact, there was also a letter for help sent with the book. Li Cheng attached great importance to it and personally called Gao Jin, who was still in the United States, asking Gao Jin to send this gentleman to Sakhalin Island in person. Crow said oh, because the book was turned over and he didn't see the name, and he had never been interested in reading. Okay, you and Dongzia go upstairs to rest. The large army of the autonomous province will arrive tomorrow. The two nodded. They were really tired today. They rushed from Daimao non-stop and went directly to the naval base to receive the big baby. They didn't rest well these 2 days. As for the poor Zhang Qiandan, it was even worse. He didn't rest for a few days on Pishan Island, and he received a task to go back and organize a large army to come to Sakhalin Island. After sitting on the boat for so long, he felt that he was about to be unable to bear it. I can't bear it anymore, Zhang Qiandan shouted on the deck. Brother Dan, calm down, you must calm down. I can't calm down, try it if you haven't touched a woman for 20 days. Brother Dan, how about, I'll find you someone who looks like a woman, you deal with her first. Get the hell out of here. I'm not a crow. Sakhalin Island, South has a lynx. A group of ordinary people gathered here secretly. They were all reclaiming group organizers sent in advance by the ordinary government. The country asked us to organize a demonstration recently. It just so happens that a few Japanese people died in Korsakov, we can make a fuss about this. Yes, the heads of major cities are here now, and we will start the day after tomorrow. Well, I will arrange reporters the day after tomorrow. I happen to have a former Tokyo Daily reporter under my command, maybe he can be useful. This time, there is a demonstration on the whole island of Karafuto. I want to see how New World responds. Isn't there a Black Lives Matter movement in the United States? Let's do a Black Lives Matter movement. These people decided to start a demonstration the day after tomorrow, vowing to make things bigger, preferably to the United Nations. Then they will portray themselves as weak people and spread the image to the West. Those Western humanitarians will definitely support them and condemn New World. By then, New World will suffer the consequences and allow these people to settle in Sakhalin Island. Then these people can slowly assimilate the Chinese on Sakhalin Island. A few decades later or 100 years later, a referendum will be held on Sakhalin Island. By then, Sakhalin Island will naturally become the territory of the Japanese. This is the idea that the Zairai think tank came up with. It has to be said that Zairai is really good at playing insidious. Especially patience, which is terrifying. If Zairai dominates the world one day, the first one to be dealt with is not China, but the American father who has a blood feud with them. After the group discussed, they returned to their respective cities and began to prepare for the demonstration. After 2 days of peace, the autonomous province troops began to land on the island quietly, and then spread to major cities on Sakhalin Island to take over various affairs. But these Zairai people were unaware of it. They only knew that the troops of the Great Mao had evacuated, and only some civil servants were waiting to hand over with the New World personnel. Early in the morning of the 3rd day, the weather was good, there was no wind, and no snow, which was just right for demonstrations. Almost all the Zairai people went out at the same time, holding white banners written in red paint and walking on the street. The lives of the people of Zaire are also lives. We firmly demand that the murderer be severely punished. We need results for the Korsakov massacre. Oppose dictatorship. Oppose the persecution of indigenous peoples in the New World. We want equal rights to survive. This is also our home. The slogans were louder and louder, making people think that these people were treated unfairly. There were also reporters recording in front of them, and these would be spread to the world through the Zaire government afterwards. But unfortunately, they were just doing it for the blind. The only people on Sakhalin Island were the Chinese army and immigrants from Java. The Big Mao people left completely. These people had just walked a distance when they heard neat footsteps coming from the opposite street. The autonomous province army wearing thick green uniforms marched in neat steps and ran towards the side. Dong dong dong. The neat landing sound shocked the ordinary people. What made them a little afraid was that the bayonets on the soldiers' guns flashed coldly, and the soldiers' bloodthirsty eyes, with a kind of hatred growing in them. This was just the day before when Li Qing asked the officers of the army to popularize some knowledge to the soldiers. Some soldiers stayed up all night, their eyes were red, just because those words kept echoing in their ears. Do you know why the frostbite cream produced by Xyrizi is so effective? Because they tested it on countless Chinese compatriots. They forced our compatriots to put their hands into ice buckets and expose them to the cold wind of dozens of degrees below zero, and then immerse the frozen arms in warm water and gradually increase the water temperature to test the best thawing temperature. Do you know why Xyrizi's brain science is so advanced? Because they have dissected the brains of countless Chinese compatriots alive. Do you know how many compatriots died in the Nanjing massacre? I tell you, more than 300,000 people. Why is it more than 300,000? Because some bodies can no longer be found. More than 80 years ago, our compatriots suffered humiliation from Xyrizi. Now Xyrizi wants to use despicable means to snatch the Sakhalin Island we captured. What should we do? Kill. 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 You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 719. The little people were a little scared when they saw the hateful eyes of the soldiers on the opposite side. That look was like a mother wolf whose cubs were killed, fierce and unyielding. Why, so many troops suddenly appeared? Are they all Asian? Where are the big hairy people? Yes, I haven't seen a big hairy person on the street since today. At this time, the little people marched realized that something was wrong. They had been making some equipment and plans for the demonstration in the past 2 days. They didn't notice that there were fewer and fewer big hairy people on the street. Captain, what do they want to do? Don't they really want to kill us? The demonstrators looked at the organizers anxiously. How is it possible? These people are just trying to scare us, don't worry. Although the organizer was a little scared, this was not the time for him to retreat. He could only pretend to be calm and continue to direct the parade. Watching the parade continue to move forward, the officer of the autonomous province sneered and waved his hand without saying a word. The square army immediately split into rows and stood in the middle of the road. Listen to my command. Raise your guns. Swish. The soldiers raised their guns in unison. The demonstrators looked at the black barrels, their breathing stagnated, and they stopped immediately. Some of them were already trembling, and they were thinking, it seems that the other party will really shoot. Fire! The Chinese soldiers did not hesitate at all, and the bullets were fired directly at the demonstrators with anger. Blood continued to ooze out of the bodies of the ordinary people in the front row of the demonstrators. Puff! Except for the sound of gunfire, there was only the sound of bullets shooting into the flesh, and the crowd fell down like wheat being cut. It was like the riverside of Jinling 80 years ago, but this time the roles were changed. The demonstrators screamed continuously and turned around to escape, but because of the large number of people and the crowded and pushing, they could not run far at all. The soldiers of the autonomous province watched all this coldly until they had used up all the magazines on their bodies and stopped. At this time, the whole street was quiet, and no one was standing on the demonstrators' side. But the soldiers were still not satisfied. Sir, there are still some alive, We. The lieutenant in charge glanced at them. Finish the job. The others have not received orders yet, so they cannot be cleared out for the time being. These are just some interest. He also knew that these were only a small number of the Zairi people. Without orders from the top, they could not act on their own, although they wanted to exterminate the Zairi people. Although the soldiers were a little disappointed, they still drew their daggers one by one and began to finish off the Zairi people who were still alive. Puff hiss, the sound of the knife entering the flesh mixed with the slight sound of blood spurting sounded, and combined with the lingering moans of the Zairi people formed a cheerful symphony. The same thing happened in major cities on Sakhalin Island. According to incomplete statistics, the Autonomous Province Army has cleared nearly 10,000 people in the parade in one day. At the same time, the New World directly announced military control over Sakhalin Island, allowing entry but not exit. Before the action, the island's communications had been closed, so it can be said that no news could be transmitted. But, not absolutely. Zairizi equipped some backbones with satellite phones, and the news that the soldiers massacred Zairizi demonstrators had reached the ears of Zairizi's top leaders. Asshole! How dare he? How dare he? Yasuda angrily pushed all the documents on his desk to the ground. He never thought that Li Qing would dare to give such an order, with nearly 10,000 people. This is not 100 years ago. If this kind of thing were exposed, Li Qing would be drowned by the spit alone. Ma Tian stood below with a sullen face. He knew that this was Li Qing's way of showing off to Zairizi. If Zairizi did not withdraw these illegal immigrants, there would probably be more massacres waiting for them. Just like the Chinese in the autonomous province cleaned up the Javanese back then, all the Zairizi people on Sakhalin Island will be completely eliminated. Prime Minister, should we withdraw those people? Ma Tian asked cautiously. Yasuda vented his anger and finally calmed down after hearing what Ma Tian said. It was useless to be angry now. The most important thing was to think about how to counter the actions of the New World. Have you got any evidence of the soldiers' massacre? Video or audio recording will do, Yasuda thought for a while and asked. If there is evidence, I will submit it directly to the United Nations. By then, the United States and China will probably not dare to stand on Li Qing's side. Especially since the United States has always advocated human rights and China has always valued its reputation. Li Qing did such an anti-human thing, and all the countries that are friendly with him dare not stand with him this time. Prime Minister, I'm sorry. We don't have any evidence, and the recordings in the satellite phone cannot be used as evidence. Ma Tian bowed his head and apologized. Now the entire Sakhalin Island is under military control, and it is still Li Qing's private territory. Even if he lives a small life, he dare not send people there blatantly. He even issued a decree that allows entry but not exit. Not to mention recording and video recording, even if a bird wants to fly out of Sakhalin Island, it has to ask the soldiers if the guns in their hands agree. And there are a steady stream of troop transport ships arriving in Sakhalin Island one after another. China is also eyeing behind the scenes, and recently it has held exercises in the East China Sea in a fake manner. Under this situation, no force dared to touch Sakhalin. After hearing this, Yasuda's face was so gloomy that water could drip from it. He knew that Li Qing was difficult to deal with, but he didn't expect him to be so difficult. The New World massacred nearly 10,000 people, and we didn't say a word. Yasuda became more and more angry as he thought about it. How about we withdraw the land reclamation group? Li Qing's purpose is probably to force us to withdraw the land reclamation group. Compared with Yasuda, Asada Kamichi is still a bit humane, but he still can't bear it. After all, those people are his compatriots. Withdraw. Wouldn't all our plans fail? Yasuda still didn't want to withdraw those people. But, Li Qing's approach is a bit like. Ma Tian hesitated. Like what? Revenge. Retaliation for what? The Jinling massacre, Nearly 200,000 compatriots in China were afraid. Asada shook his head. Although this was just a guess, it was very likely that the man would do this according to his temperament. Yasuda slammed the table hard. It's impossible, absolutely impossible. We weren't even allowed to pay compensation back then. I remember that Baldhead gave up his small life to pay compensation to show his generosity. According to Yasuda's inertial thinking, the Chinese are a nation that does not hold grudges. Asada pursed his lips. Li Qing is not an ordinary person. The lives of ordinary people are not lives in his eyes. Yasuda also fell silent. They had not suffered losses at the hands of other countries in recent years, but they had suffered defeats under Li Qing more than once or twice. To be honest, he was a little scared of Li Qing. In this case, I will personally contact the beautiful country and ask them to come forward to coordinate. Yasuda was silent for a moment and said. It was impossible for the Wasteland Reclamation Group to withdraw. One move would affect the whole body. Nearly 200,000 people could not be evacuated just by saying they wanted to. Now he can only pray to the Father of the beautiful country, considering that there is no credit but hard work in these years. He can come forward to coordinate. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value. I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 720. Sakhalin Island, Li Qing's temporary manor. William. How do you have time to call me? Li Qing received William's call and pretended to be confused. He had long guessed that the United States would definitely call to inquire. After all, nearly 10,000 people died. In order to save face, William would also call to inquire. What's going on? Why are you so careless? William asked with a smile. His meaning was very clear. He didn't care about those little days of killing or not. He cared about Li Qing actually letting people leak the news. There's no way. I have tried my best to block it. There is a satellite phone on the other side, Li Qing said softly without caring. He knew that as long as there was no conclusive evidence, there was no need to worry. You should also explain why you suddenly carried out military control. Although it is your private territory, there are still many people watching. William reminded in a low voice. Well, that's a problem. Let's say that the nuclear weapons I bought from Ermao last time caused a slight nuclear leak due to thunderstorms. William had to give face anyway. Li Qing thought about it and found a random reason. In fact, the nuclear bomb was not on Sakhalin Island, but was lying quietly in the autonomous province of Java. However, William didn't care. As long as there was a reason, it would be fine. The United States didn't care whether the matter was true or false. The two discussed their words and hung up the phone happily. The next day, the news spread throughout the world. Everyone knew that there was a nuclear leak on Sakhalin Island, and people also put aside their doubts about the sudden military control. No one believed the rumors of a genocide on Sakhalin Island. Prime Minister Yasuda was so angry that he couldn't think that Li Qing would find this reason. Nuclear leak. Now the whole people of the country have been scared out of their wits by these three words. For a time, the people of the country who had the conditions began to immigrate to the country of coffee. The plan of the Zaire government to secretly instigate them to smuggle to Sakhalin Island completely failed. Just kidding, there is nuclear radiation in Honshu, and now there is a nuclear leak in Sakhalin Island. Only a fool would smuggle to Sakhalin Island. Smuggling to Siberia is better than going to Sakhalin Island, at least it is more comfortable to freeze to death. Some senior government officials in Java, which is across the sea from Zaire, couldn't sit still after hearing the news. Java, Presidential Office. President Ter, I heard that the nuclear weapons of the autonomous province leaked in Sakhalin Island due to a thunderstorm. In addition, the autonomous province is short of troops. Should we? Ter sat on his back in the boss chair, took a puff of cigar, and looked up at the official who was speaking. Haha, Don't you know who Li Qing is? If he can say the word true, I will take your surname. You believe that I am Qin Shi Huang, which is more true than the news of the nuclear leak in Sakhalin Island. As someone who has dealt with Li Qing, Ter didn't believe Li Qing's lies at all. If he guessed correctly, the nuclear weapons were still sleeping in some unknown valley. So even though he coveted the autonomous province, he had no intention of taking action at all, because he knew that Li Qing must have a backup plan. If he failed to steal the chicken, he would lose the rice, and it was very likely that he would be hanged instead of being a rapist. Being extremely timid is being cautious. As long as I don't take action, I will always be invincible. Ter knows this well. Once the news of the Sakhalin nuclear leak spread, in addition to the small life being frustrated, there was another country that was not very happy, that is, Ermao, who sold nuclear weapons to the autonomous province. The senior military officials of Ermao were also cursing in the conference room. Even people who know a little physics know the stability of nuclear warheads. As long as you don't dismantle it violently, there will be no nuclear leak at all. Once the Sakhalin nuclear leak happened, Ermao's military industry collapsed halfway, and many countries cancelled their arms orders, making the already shaky Ermao finances even worse. But there was no way, so he could only secretly accuse Li Qing of being unkind. After Li Qing's operation, the massacre of the Japanese demonstrators did not cause any waves at all. Except for the fact that the bodies had to be burned for a while, there was no hand residue left. Even if Zirizi wanted to make trouble, he could not get any evidence. Brother, the entire Sakhalin island is now under our control, and the autonomous province is organizing the second immigration. Zhang Qiandan stood in front of Li Qing and reported respectfully. Li Qing nodded, but he still had to consider the immigration for the time being. After all, the spread of the news was a nuclear leak. If the immigrants came in so quickly, wouldn't it be exposed? Wait for the immigration plan. There are still many Zirizi people in Sakhalin Island. We have to find a way to get them away. Li Qing touched his chin. The false news of nuclear leakage could prevent the illegal immigrants from coming in, but whether there was a real nuclear leak, the Zirizi people on Sakhalin Island knew it. So he had to find a way to let these people escape by themselves. Dongxiu, have the viruses that Ah Sheng sent to Xiaorizai last time not been used up yet? Li Qing suddenly remembered that there were several bottles of viruses besides the plague that Tian Yangsheng sent to Xiaorizai last time, but because these viruses all had special medicines, Li Qing did not use them. Zhang Dongxiu heard his elder brother suddenly mention this matter, and recalled it in his mind. It was indeed true. Yes, it seems to be in the hands of Aji and Xianji. Well, let them bring it when they come, Li Qing said softly. Brother, those are all treated with special medicines and are not fatal. Zhang Dongxiu thought for a while and said. Zhang Dongxiu clearly remembered the description of those viruses in the instructions. They are highly contagious, can make people itch unbearably, and produce pus-like blisters on the face. But there are special medicines, and even if you don't take the special medicine, they are not fatal. In plain words, it means that the virus looks scary, but in fact it can heal itself within a week. Is it fatal or not, isn't it up to us to decide? Are the nearly 10,000 corpses fake? Let someone find a few corpses to make up, take pictures and say that these people died of the virus. Let the virus spread on the island, and those little people will naturally believe it. Crow clapped his hands excitedly when he heard it. Yes, by then, these little people who are not infected will try every means to escape Sakhalin Island. Crow can think of it, let alone others. Everyone realizes what their big brother is thinking. There is truth in the false, there is false in the true, there is false false true true, true true false false. By then, we don't need to do it ourselves, these little people will flee. Even if some smart people stay, we can use the excuse of eliminating the virus to humanely destroy them. After all, More than 10,000 people died from this virus, and it is not impossible to have thousands more. Hee, it just so happens that little people did build a virus experiment base on Sakhalin Island. We can blame this matter on little people. This is called good and evil will be rewarded. Zhang Dongzhou said happily. Is it true that there is a virus laboratory built by little people on Sakhalin Island during World War II? It was the big sister of the 3-star hotel who came to Sakhalin Island last time and chatted with him.